Good evening. This is STV News. The ruling and opposition parties, including the Liberal Democratic Party and the Constitutional Democratic Party, met in the Diet on the 3rd. Opposition parties have demanded that the current Diet session, which ends on the 5th, be extended to the end of the year in order to take all possible measures against the new coronavirus infection. Liberal Democratic Party Chairman Hiroshi Moriyama refused because it would be hinder the work of formulating the third supplementary budget for 2020. At the meeting, Constitutional Democratic Party Chairman Jun Azumi mentioned the suspicion that former Minister of Agriculture, Forestry and Fisheries Takamori Yoshikawa had received money from a chicken egg trader and emphasized that the session may be forcibly closed to cover the suspicion. In connection with the eve of Sakura wo Mirokai, he reiterated the invitation of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe to the Diet. The Constitutional Democratic Party and the Communist Party will submit a motion to extend the session to the House of Representatives on the 4th, but the ruling party will reject it. However, at the meeting between the ruling and opposition parties, it was agreed that the new corona would be examined during the closing session. Liberal Democratic Party Secretary General Toshihiko Nikai and Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato held a meeting at the Chinese restaurant in Tokyo on the night of the 2nd to exchange opinions on the dissolution of the House of Representatives at the general election. There are widespread views within the government and the ruling party that it will be difficult to dissolve by January next year. But attendees shared their views on the timing. Hiroshi Moriyama, Chairman, and Motoo Hayashi, Deputy Secretary General, were also present at the meeting. The deliberation schedule for the third supplementary budget for 2020 was also discussed, and it was agreed that it would be approved by the end of January. On the 2nd, the government decided to make the cancellation free of charge in response to a request to refrain from using travel to and from Tokyo under the tourism support measures GOTO travel for cancellation offers from 6 p.m. to 13th on the 1st. The government will indemnify travel and accommodation businesses for 35% of the price. It was reported at the new coronavirus infectious disease control headquarters meeting held by the Tokyo Metropolitan Government on the 2nd. The ruling party evaluates the response between the government and the capital. Liberal Democratic Party Chairman Hiroshi Moriyama welcomed reporters, saying the Prime Minister and the Governor of Tokyo have come to a very good conclusion at the top talks. Meanwhile, the Constitutional Democratic Party's Chairman Jun Azumi criticized the Prime Minister's response at the party meeting, saying, "It's halfway irresponsible and the worst decision of a political leader. If the infection spreads, it's just a man-made disaster." He expressed his intention to continue pursuing it in the Diet. Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato said at a press conference on the 3rd that the Tokyo District Public Prosecutor's Office would file a case for Mr. Abe's public secretary in connection with the eve of the Sakura viewing party, hosted by the former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's Supporters Association. Regarding the press conference, he declined to mention, "I would like to refrain from answering because it is related to the activities of the investigative agency." Regarding Mr. Abe's response, he only pointed out, "I have explained as much as possible in the Diet. I know that I said I will fully cooperate with the investigation the other day." The yen exchange rate on the Tokyo Foreign Exchange Market on the 3rd was 104.44 to 44 yen per dollar as of 9 a.m., which was 12 yen higher and the dollar weaker than the previous day, 104.56 to 56 yen. On the 2nd, the British government announced that the Medicines and Healthcare Products Regulatory Agency, MHRA, has approved a vaccine for the new coronavirus jointly developed by U.S. pharmaceutical giant Pfizer and German biopharmacy company BioNTech. The approval of the corona vaccine is the first in developed countries. In the UK, vaccination will start next week. Corona, which claimed the lives of about 1.5 million people and plunged the world economy into a recession, has reached a major turning point. Japan, which is about to hold the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics next summer, plans to approve it as soon as possible. Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato said, "If there is an application, we will confirm its effectiveness and safety before approving it." The United States planned to approve it by the 10th, and the European Union by the 29th. And similar movements are expected to occur in each country in the future. As a result of clinical trials, Pfizer vaccine showed a 95% effect, and there was no problem with safety. The Japanese government has agreed to receive 120 million doses of this vaccine by the end of June next year, 60 million people with 2 doses. On the 2nd, KEIDANREN revealed the outline of the Management Labor Policies Special Committee report of KEIDANREN, which shows the basic stance of management toward the 2021 spring battle, giving the impact of the new coronavirus infection on business performance varies by industry and company. It is cautious about raising wages, saying it is not realistic to consider a uniform wage increase. The momentum of wage increases that has continued since 2014 under the former Abe administration is likely to stall due to the corona wreck. Regarding the base up bear that raises the basic salary, the outline plan clearly states that it is difficult to implement for companies whose profits have deteriorated significantly due to the coronavirus, saying that business survival and employment maintenance are the top priorities. It is pointed out that there may be cases where labor and management consider whether or not to implement regular salary increases. On the other hand, companies whose profits are stable or increasing show that bearing in a way that suits their own circumstances is also an option. Regarding bonuses, companies with stable business performance need to be paid appropriately, while companies with poor business performance have to carefully consider whether or not they can be paid. The government, the Tokyo Metropolitan Government, and the Games Organizing Committee held the Coronavirus Infectious Diseases Control Coordination Meeting at the Prime Minister's office on the 2nd to prepare for the Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics next summer, and summarize the interim arrangement regarding coronavirus measures for the Games. As measure for foreign spectators to enter the country, it does not require waiting for 2 weeks. It also includes health management using a dedicated app. It will be decided by next spring. Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga has indicated his determination to hold the Olympics with spectators, and the government is considering accepting foreigners. Toshihiro Mutou, the Secretary General of the Organization Committee, explained to reporters the interim arrangement was made on the premise that there is no vaccine. As an issue for the future study, the interim reorganization pointed out measures to be taken when vaccination becomes possible, taking it into the account approval of the new corona vaccine in the United Kingdom. The International Ski Association, FIS, will be held by the Ski Association of Japan and the 2022 Beijing Olympics Organizing Committee on the 2nd regarding the World Ski and Snowboard Championships and the World Cup W Cup scheduled for February to March next year in China. announced that it was notified not to do so. The reason is that the Chinese authorities require quarantine measures for 14 days after entering the country as a measure against the infection of the new coronavirus. In addition to the freestyle skiing and snowboarding world championships scheduled for February 18 to 28 at Zhangjiakou, the target will be the Jump Men's and Nordic Combined Men's Distance Men and Women World Cup and Alpine Women's World Cup. The FIS will announce alternative tournaments, etc. if official contact from the International Ski Federation is received and it's officially decided to cancel the tournament. Chief Cabinet Secretary Katsunobu Kato said at a press conference on the 3rd that China had permitted the export of cryptography related to electricity based on the export control law. We have begun investigating the impact on Japan. Regarding this regulation, Mr. Kato pointed out that a part of the target has been announced. He added, "I would like to pay close attention to the range of target items." And that's all for today. See you tomorrow for another news update.